Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. Welcome to another installment of Through the Ages, where we look back at how civilizations in Age of Empires 2 have evolved between their original designs and today. In this episode, we're going to finish the forgotten DLC civilizations with the Italians. They were intended to combine elements of the Venetian and Genoese navies, as well as include the mercenary condottieri, who historically contracted themselves out to whatever Italian city-state would pay them the most, hence making them a team unit available to multiple civilizations. Interestingly, the papacy didn't end up featuring prominently, with Italians having a decent monastery tech tree, but curiously, no real bonus for monks at all. Instead, design-wise, Italians had quite a few similarities to the Spanish, including a bit of a gunpowder, naval, and trade emphasis, as well as share 95% of their tech trees, with those two having among the most overlap of any two civilizations in the game. Of course, their unique units take them in slightly different directions, and Italians are decidedly an archer civ, while Spanish lack crossbow. Unfortunately, things started out a little rough for Italians when they appeared in late 2013. At release in the Forgotten DLC, Italians had just a 10% discount on advancing, half-price dock tax with no boost for the university, plus 2 line of sight on fishing ships as a now defunct bonus, and just a 15% discount on gunpowder units. Pavese also only affected Genoese crossbows instead of all archers and condottieri, with the Genoese crossbow being more expensive but worse than they are today. Condottieri also now have more attack and are much faster, so anyone who accuses Forgotten Empires of making their newly released civilizations overpowered has clearly never heard of the Italians. Arguably, they had made some progress though, as they were even weaker in the original unofficial Forgotten mod prior to being picked up by Microsoft, where I'm pretty sure, though it's hard to confirm now, their team bonus was either plus 25% or plus 50% faster working universities, instead of the condottiero being shared, which, at least in team games you could argue, is not as good as the flexibility given by the condottieri to civilizations usually weak to gunpowder. Personally, I found the Genoese crosswomen in particular was an interesting unit at the outset, being the only archer unit with a bonus against cavalry. A Genoese crosswoman had actually been introduced in the Age of Kings game for Nintendo DS years before, and in that iteration were just a higher attack version of an archer, which is kind of what you expect from a crossbow unique unit. Forgotten Empires decided to take the opportunity in HD to go in a different direction though, and flip the classic AoE2 design of cavalry countering archers on its head, and is the sort of bonus I think the original Age of Kings developers would have liked for a unique unit. It has the same energy as the Cataphract being anti-infantry, or the Goth Huscarl being anti-archer. You could even throw in the Condottiero as an infantry-resisting gunpowder into that category as well, and Italians flipping counters on their head is a subtle theme. Clearly though, the Italians' main emphasis was on water maps, and at release were easily one of the weakest at the time, or any time frankly, with just 150 in resource savings as their only reliable bonus on land prior to clicking up to Imperial Age. There's a difficult to quantify boost when clicking up one villager earlier admittedly, but so many civilizations just get objectively much more help with regular play. Maybe unsurprisingly, when African kingdoms came out bringing the first opportunity for a major patch to address Italians, they received numerous buffs across the board. Their discount on advancing increased by half, their gunpowder units got cheaper, their plus 2 line of sight on fishing ships became a much more useful discount of 33% on that unit, Pavese affected all archers and had its cost basically cut in half, initially even applying to skirmishers, though that was later made into an exception, and hussars were also added to the tech tree. If that wasn't enough, condottieri then no longer required castles to create, gain plus 1 attack, and plus 20% speed. Italians were one of the biggest winners of any AoE2 patch in history, and even something as simple as getting fully upgraded hussars did a lot to fill out their tech tree. They were still clearly a great water civ, with cheaper fishing ships and half-price dock tax, but their tools on land maps were suddenly much better as well. The next DLC, Rise of the Rajas, was more of a mixed bag. The Genoese crossbow was made cheaper and had its bonus against camels increased, but the fishing ship discount was reduced to just 20% and then 15% shortly afterward. That was fair enough, as a 33% discount is a pretty crazy advantage for a unit you're creating in Dark Age. Condottieri then had their attack bumped back down by 1, lost their base pierce armor, and took longer to train, jumping from 13 to 18 seconds. One thing that was becoming obvious was the Condottiero was a very strong weapon on water maps, giving you the chance to focus solely on water until Imperial Age, and then drop barracks to produce a unit that didn't require the usual investment to tech into that, say, champions did. The creation time being roughly half that of a champion didn't help the problem either. This is also when the Condottiero gained its own special armor type, as prior to this, their plus 10 infantry armor not only resisted hand cannoneers, but also units like cataphracts, jaguar warriors, and plumed archers, which weren't gunpowder. Following this change, those units gained a new secret bonus against the condottiero specifically to offset what was being blocked. Heading into Definitive Edition, the feeling was definitely that Italians were one of, if not the strongest water map civ in the game, but not particularly good on land maps, as they were just too slow to get rolling, and only became strong once their gunpowder bonus kicked in, or they reached the elite Genoese crossbow with its much faster firing rate. Going by the stats, in the last few months of the HD version, Italians had the 5th lowest win rate on 1v1 Arabia, confirming that general sentiment, and really shouldn't have been a surprise, given half their bonuses aren't relevant on land. The devs obviously knew this information and tried to improve Italians a bit in 2019's Definitive Edition. In that, Condottiero had their plus 1 attack restored for the second time, going from 9 to 10, back to 9, back to 10, and were now also affected by the +1/+1 armor increase from Pavese. The non-elite Genoese crossbow's attack rate was then bumped up by a whopping 50% to match the elite version, and their creation time was then reduced by several seconds. Over time, it felt like there was a greater acknowledgement that castles are hard to build, and training time for unique units has largely dropped across the board, with this being a good example. 8 months later, surprisingly, Italians were, if anything, even worse, as now the 4th worst Arabia civ on the ladder by win rate despite their buffs, and now more civilizations than ever in the game, though of course other weak civilizations had also been buffed. At the same time, Italians were still a great naval civ, having the 4th best win rate on full water maps like Islands, and doing just as well on swamp and hybrid maps. If they could use their naval bonuses, they were clearly in a good position. And this is the sort of thing you have to imagine developers hate, where if they try to improve the civ on land maps, they risk complaints the civ is then too good on water. Maybe partly to address the water-land win rate discrepancy, in Lords of the West their 50% cheaper dock bonus was blended into a 33% discount on docks and a 33% discount on university tax. Not only did this call back to their initial idea of faster working universities prior to the official release, but cleverly gave a cheaper ballistics tech to crossbows on land maps. The Genoese crossbow's cost was also reduced by 5 gold, with these changes together really giving the sense they wanted to push Italians as an archer civilization. Since then, they've only had a few small tweaks to the cost of the Pavese tag, and the non-elite Genoese crossbow's training time was reduced further to match the elite version, giving us where Italians land today. There's no argument they're still a relatively weak landmap civilization, despite all of their improvements over the years, being now the 2nd worst on Arabia recently, as a matter of fact. So if anything, they keep falling further behind. On the other hand, if a map has water on it, they're reliably going to land near the top, and in fairness, not every civ needs to be good all of the time. The main issue is just if you try to enhance their best bonus on open land maps by further increasing the cheaper advancing bonus, you just end up pumping up their water game even more, and potentially overtune them on arena as well, where they don't seem to struggle. Funny enough, a bonus for berry collection would probably be one of the most effective ways of improving the civilization's Dark Age economy on land without helping their water game, though that particular idea was given instead to the next civilization we're going to look at in the series. Something I find an interesting quirk is that all of the Italians' bonuses plus one of their unique techs have landed with a discount theme. Most of that was part of their original design, though notably the fishing ships plus 2 line of sight was swapped out for another discount, so the devs haven't shied away from embracing and leaning further into that discount theme. Now, while part of why I started this series when I did is it feels like AoE2 balance is in a pretty good spot, and I felt reasonably confident that the oldest civs would only get small tweaks if any going forward, I have to admit I'm less confident of that when it comes to Italians. They are doing quite poorly on open maps, and while I'm not calling for it, I would not be surprised if someone watching this in 2026 or later is familiar with a slightly different Italians than we have now. Perhaps a new bonus or adjustment to help them out on land maps, but that's just my speculation. That'll do it for this one though. Big thanks to James, Jared2142, Niels, Samantha, Shawarma Rider, Steven, Woodruff, and everyone else on Patreon for their amazing support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.